to the Knock Knock Episode 3 Q&A. My name is Jason B. Jones, and I'm here with my brother and our communications director, Simon Jones. How you doing, Simon?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a while since we had a Q&A. We've had a lot happen between Episode 2 and 3. It's been like work and sickness and research, and we had some feedback that we were adjusting for, and Episode 3 was super important to me. The title of Episode 3 was Who Was Betty Jones? And, other than me wanting to try to do everything I can to bring awareness back to Betty and Catherine's murder, the other focal point for me in doing this podcast, and Simon, I think it's for you as well, was really getting to know Betty more. Don't you agree?
I do. There was a lot of context, I think, that a story like this demands. And we've kind of already heard the end, and we've gone into that in depth. But I feel like it was important that we share with people the beginning, and some of the hardships that shaped her life and brought her to where she was at the end. I feel like that is more important. Who she was, the relationships she had, the trials and tribulations that helped her to become the wonderful woman that everybody knew.
Yeah.
And that was then dramatically taken away from us. So yeah, I'm really glad that we were able to share this very valuable context and people get a better sense of who this person was and their history.
I read one time, I think, where it was talking about, when we leave this world, we have a tombstone. It shows our birth date and it shows our death date, and there's a dash in between those 2 days, and that really is the representation of our whole life. And, when we started to unpack Betty's life, even more so than just the stories we heard growing up, we learned a lot about how full her life was.
Yeah.
I mean, it was complicated, and it wasn't complicated in that it was shrouded in mystery. It was just a lot happened to her, and I think that we would be remiss, at least for what I want to get out of this podcast, just to only focus on a unsolved murder, because she was so much more than that.
Yeah, and if she were here today, if she were to be able to come back, I feel like those that knew her best would not just want to talk about the worst moment of her life at the end. I feel like people wouldn't sit around talking about that. I feel like people would reminisce and would talk about the friends, the family, the organization she was a part of, and the massive impact that she has had on the number of people we can't even begin to count.
I mean, it's generations at this point.
It is. Yeah. It is generations. I feel like that's what if she were here, if she were to come back, I feel like that's what those that knew her best would want to talk about. And so it only made sense to include an episode that focused more on that.
Yeah. Well, and I listen to everyone listening. I just want to thank you so much for your patience as we sort of worked through that. We wanted to make sure to get this one right. It really was the most important episode for me, and thank you so much for hanging on. And I'm so excited also to share with you our next episode, episode 4, which is Who is Catherine Krigler? Because there's an amazing story I want to share with you about how we really met the Kriglers. It's really cool. So, Simon, you talked about this a little bit already, but I'd just love to hear your just overall thoughts about the episode. And you talked a bit about making sure it's important to set up context. How do you feel like we really established that for the overall timeline?
Well, personally, I really liked towards the beginning of the episode. There's a narration from the Starkville Daily News that was it was really powerful. I'd skimmed through that article in the past, but the way it was so wonderfully narrated by the person that we use, and I was telling Jason that in a way, it kind of about it. His narration sort of it leapt off of the page for me, and I could just as easily see, rather than the journalist who wrote it, I could just as easily see the mayor of Starkville saying that in a town square, in a speech to a gathered crowd about remaining calm, but at the same time facing those new realities of the danger, just that someone could be among us, but we can't give into the fear, we can't give into hysteria. However, at the same time, we can't continue on as we did before, and we can't be naive. We can't, put this under the rug. And it's important to take these steps, such as locking your doors or using the buddy system. So that was, hearing the way that he said that, I don't know. It really meant a lot to me that a story like that, an article like that, can take on a new life when the right person narrates it, and it gives you a different perspective of how somebody may have read that and thought, oh my gosh, life as we know it, has changed, and maybe things aren't as safe, and maybe I do need to take precautions.
And that was written in the days after the murder. And I think what's interesting is if you were to have removed the date from that, it would be as timely today as it was back in 1990. So I think that for me, as the reason that I wanted to include that article was that it really shows you that the world has not changed much. That there are still scary, evil people out there, and although we need to be cautious, like you said, Simon, we can't live in a state of fear. We have to move on with our lives, and even today, as we're even talking about this podcast, people have moved on with their lives, yet we still need to pursue truth and justice for these acts and these crimes against people, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and the article makes very clear that the Starkville Police Department are making steps, and they know what they're doing, even though it may not appear so to the public. And though the murder has gone unsolved, I still believe that the Starkville Police Department continues to know what they're doing and continues to know the best course of action going forward to find the killer and to bring them to justice. So, yeah.
I know we've talked about this before, Simon, but it's been really encouraging to me personally that everyone is listening. We're seeing just increased numbers of people that are downloading. Simon, I don't know if you know this, but we're about to cross 100,000 downloads, which is just so humbling. It's no testament to what we're doing, Simon and I and the team, but I believe that it's a testament to an active community of people that are investing in the story and really wanting to come alongside us to find truth and to find answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Simon, just quickly, in your opinion, why do you think that this story is really resonating with people?
I would like to think, my opinion is, I would like to think, generally speaking, everyone has a vested interest in justice by definition. When a crime is committed or something is, say, the laws are broken, people, generally speaking, want to see someone held accountable for that. I think it becomes a little more personal. I think it becomes that it definitely gets magnified when the crime is murder. When it's not just a thief, it's someone taking a life away from you that meant something to you. I think people get people get more emotional, people get more invested when it's something like that. And here we have a story of injustice, of the absence of justice, of something was taken away, a life in this case, and there was really no resolution to it. And people have been left hurting and been left wondering ever since. And I think there aren't a lot of people that are okay with that.
Yeah.
And so they want to hear what's being done about it. They want to know that there can be steps taken, even if they're small baby steps, to get to that end goal, that ideal of justice in our society. So some people just like cold cases, you know, and just as a pastime. I've talked to a lot of people that have written in, and they've told me different things, different reasons that they listen. A few of our listeners, I think, maybe knew Betty or knew of Betty. Others have had a loved one taken away from them, and they definitely have that empathy. They definitely can relate, whether that was solved or not. So, yeah, whatever your reason is, if you're listening to this right now, we appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's just been really cool to see how many people have engaged since this last episode. I mean, we've heard from podcasters wanting to do interviews to hear more about Betty and Catherine, which is awesome, and we'll be announcing those soon as those podcasts come out, because we're really trying to dig into the rest of the, there's this whole podcasting community, which, we feel, I feel unworthy to be a part of, but it's been great to interact with them and to find, like-minded people out there that are using this medium to tell stories. And, and Simon, I know you've had some conversations with Crime Stoppers, which has been really amazing to see how they can help.
Yeah, definitely. This is something we're continuing. We don't have really any news or anything to report yet, but we're actively looking into speaking with Crime Stoppers. And this idea, by the way, was brought to us by a listener. This was not an organic idea that we had. Honestly, we hadn't even considered it before. It was for someone bluntly, told us about it. So,
Yeah, because we're not interested, not interested is probably the wrong word. We're not actively, fielding suspects. Anytime we get a message that says, hey, have you thought about this person, or have you looked into this similar crime, our response universally is, the first thing they need to do is they need to reach out to the Starkville Police Department and share that information with them. Sergeant Bill Lott is over there, and he's doing amazing work, and he's the guy. He's going to be the person that we're going to send stuff to if we find anything, and you should as well. But to your point, Simon, one of the things that was really interesting about the person suggesting Crime Stoppers, which we haven't really, like you said, we haven't landed yet, we're still researching, is, there are people out there that are scared to talk to police. There are people out there that are scared to call and leave us a voicemail and be on our Q&A episode. And we want to make sure that if there is any information out there, that it doesn't stop with us, it doesn't stop with even the police department, that people, if they have that they can share.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's jump into a few questions from the Knock Knock community.
So our friend Allie writes, Jason, this is really random, but I am listening to episode 2's Q&A and loving it. I just wanted to give one tiny note of feedback that I noticed in the previous episode as well. I don't know if it's just because of the mic, but the level of your voice is drastically louder than the level of the phone call questions in Simon's voice. So I find myself adjusting the volume constantly back and forth. Again, it's a small thing, but I believe in this podcast and what you guys are doing, and if that feedback could help at all, that would be worth it.
That's awesome. Allie is a friend of mine, and I'm so thankful for that kind of feedback. Gosh, Simon, I think that me being loud has been a lifelong problem. So I don't think that's just...
Tell me about it.
I don't think that's reserved to the podcast. But I want people to know out there that we take that feedback really seriously. I literally we're recording on a new piece of equipment tonight to try to, better evenly level out our voices so that you're hearing what Simon has to say as much as you're hearing me. And I know it's annoying. I've listened to podcasts before where you have to sort of ride the volume and turn it up and down. So all that being said, your feedback is so important to us. We want to make sure that this is the best podcast possible because I don't want anything to distract from the story that we're trying to tell. So please continue to give us feedback. It's so important to us. I talk about that a bit at the beginning of episode 3, and the encouragement is amazing. The critical feedback is also great as well, and we take it really seriously. So thank you so much, Allie. I really appreciate it, and hopefully this episode sounds better.
Hey, Jason and the Knock Knock podcast team. This is Rachel from Ohio. I am responding to your request for researchers and writers from episode 3, Sparking. I am a student in forensic psychology, looking to get my doctorate, and wondered if you guys had ever considered adding someone with that expertise to your team. Forensic psychologists have lots of different jobs, but think about it where psychology and the law sort of intersect with one another. So probably what you know us most for are things like criminal profilers or jury consultants, trial consultants, that sort of thing. But we look at criminality and psychology and the way those two come together. So adding someone like a forensic psychologist to your team, you could look at the details of the crime scene and see how they sort of map back together to produce a profile of the individual who might have committed this crime. It's just another way, another part of that community that you talk about, extra information to come together and form this picture and to figure out who might have perpetrated this crime. That's it. You guys are doing a great job. Love that you're not about the sensationalism, and you're just trying to find the story and the answer of what happened to your grandma. Best of luck. Thanks.
Rachel, thanks so much. And wow, that's such an amazing career that you're pursuing. It sounds so interesting. I think, Simon, you and I have talked about this, is that nothing about what we do for a living has anything to do with like crime or police work.
Not even close.
Yeah, not even close. Like the only reason that we're really involved in this is because of the personal nature of the story. So to hear about people like Rachel who are pursuing this as a career, man, I'm just so like, those type of people are heroes to me that are pursuing that with their lives. So I think that's awesome. As far as adding those people to our team is a bunch of volunteers that we have that are all contributing, what they know how to do. And Simon, we've talked about this, is that the community that we're building, I hope, will be full of all sorts of people who have all sorts of skills. And so, things like our Facebook group and our discussion board, man, those are the places where someone that has a particular set of skills could really dig in and start those conversations with other people in the community. And so, man, Rachel, I would encourage you to dig in and start talking to other listeners and anything that you want to do to try to bring light to profiling or digging into things. I'm open to all of that, and love that you took the time to call in and are wanting to dig in. So I love that. Please stay in touch, and if there's anything that you can think of that we can add to what we're doing, or how we can do this better, please, any of that would be awesome. Thank you. Let's take a quick break. While living in Ethiopia, some friends of mine witnessed firsthand the consequences of extreme poverty. They saw how Ethiopian women, in an effort to provide for themselves and their families, were forced to make unthinkable choices just to survive. These friends realized they wanted to give these women another choice, one that would provide them the opportunity to earn a living. It was from this experience that Fashionable was born. This movement started with a collection of hand-woven scarves, of which my wife has many, and has grown to include handmade leather bags and jewelry, apparel, shoes, and most recently, a premium denim line, lovingly crafted by women who have overcome extraordinary circumstances. We're so honored to partner with Fashionable and offer our listeners 15% off their first order. Go to livefashionable.com and use the discount code KNOCK15 at checkout. Again, visit livefashionable.com today to help bring opportunity and choice to these amazing women. Before we jump back into questions, I just want to give a shout out to another podcast that I've listened to over the past couple of weeks that are seeking justice in the North Mississippi area, which is really cool. And it's called Open, the Case of Lee Ochi. And Lee Ochi disappeared from her home in Tupelo in 1992. Emma and her whole team, man, they have been so supportive of our podcast and what we're doing. And their podcast is really, really great. They have 6 episodes that are out. They recorded all their episodes ahead of time and released them all at the same time. And now they're doing Q&A and doing different behind the scenes episodes. And what's been really cool, Simon, and man, they are journalists. Like their job is to dig into these stories and to tell them. And they've been, they've gone to school and they've been trained and they're doing this. And man, I feel so ill-equipped when I hear them do such a great job of telling this story. I just think it's, Simon, I don't know about you, but I just think it's really cool that there are other podcasts in the area that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And the story of Lee Ochi, certainly like Betty, is one that is unresolved and was in the media, but they kind of, as the years go by, they fizzle out. And it's certainly similar to what we're trying to do. It's bringing attention to it. A lot of times journalism looks to the podcast community for what's going on and what people are interested in, what people are talking about. And it's so great to see another podcast like Open doing what they do and doing it really, really well. It's an inspiration, and it gives us some great ideas for what we can do to make our podcast better. And we can't say enough good things about them. You should definitely check it out if you have a chance. Like Jason said, all 6 episodes came out at the same time, so you can, like Netflix, you can binge it if you need to.
Yeah.
Definitely go over there, check it out, give them your support. I'm sure they could use the reviews and the subscriptions. So they're awesome, and we really couldn't be prouder of being associated with them.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Emma, for your support. And be sure to listen to their show by searching for Open on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts.
Anna writes, "Hi, just curious if you could post a map or aerial view showing Catherine's house and possibly her church. Just trying to get a feel for Starkville. Thanks for sharing this with us. I hope and pray that you turn up information that leads to this murderer and rapist. I am sure your grandmother is very proud of you and your brother."
Anna, thank you so much. And what a great idea. I think that's what's really cool about these question and answer episodes, because I hadn't really thought of that. I think I had talked about it in a previous episode when I first went to Starkville. And Simon, you haven't been yet, but it's amazing how close Catherine's house is to the church. I mean, it's literally on the same plot of land. So the thing that really struck me when I was there is, I was at Betty's funeral at the church as a 10-year-old. Simon, I don't think you came to the funeral. I think you were staying with someone. Someone was watching after you during the funeral. But I could have literally seen the house that Betty was killed in from the parking lot of her funeral, which was it just blew my mind. Because in my head, I don't know if this was just as a kid, in my head I thought, it was across town. And I just had no idea the small footprint of Starkville. So, I will post a screenshot and circle Catherine's house and the church, and you could take a look at where those are. And also, I just want to let you guys know that if you go to knockknockpodcast.com and you go into our top navigation, you'll see a button that says episodes. And there's a drop down where it goes through all of our episodes. And for every episode, I'm posting the articles that are read, some photos. In the last episode, I posted a photo of the card that we read that Betty sent our family. And so there's a lot of things there that you can dig into. But wow, I mean, if there's ever anything that you'd like to see that we've referenced in one of the episodes, please reach out. We'd love to post it for you guys there so you can dig in a little bit deeper and get more invested into the story.
Hi, my name is Andrew Dorsey. I'm a listener, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I just had a comment, and I just wanted to say generally thank you. This has been a blessing to me. I think out of all the kind of ongoing podcast shows I listen to or, just talk shows, this is one of those few shows that I look forward to because it's real and because I'm hoping for a solution. And, I'm basically, none of us know what's going to happen. But I have to say that this episode 3 is just it's incredible. Your ability to take the criticism and use that is admirable. And I love how you just laid out Betty's life so that I would understand probably some of the hardest things that people could go through in life. And it just seems like it never stopped for her. It seemed like bad things happened from beginning to middle to the end. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that. Because you kind of, you think to yourself, well, most people have a nice life and then, it's over and that's a thing. And I guess I don't really understand how a person could hold tight to their faith and their beliefs and hope after going through the amount of things that you went through.
Wow, Andrew, what an amazing message. Thank you so much for calling in. I believe that we're not given anything that we can't handle, and it really makes me love Betty more because it seems like she was able to handle a lot, which means she was an amazing person. She had. I mean, I wish all of you guys could have known her, and like I've said, I didn't know her very long. But I just remember what it was like when she walked into a room. That's what I remember most, is that there was so much joy. She was so infectious with her love and kindness that literally to know her was to be her family. You hear a lot from Strat in the episode about her involvement with the baseball team. I mean, it was just, she was the baseball mom. And I feel like she wasn't just the baseball mom, she was the Starkville mom. And she was the mom to anybody that knew her. She was just a mother, in the best sense of the word. And I'm just, the more I learn about her, and Simon, you could tell me if you feel the same way, the more I want to model my own life after someone like her, because nothing stopped her from loving others. No matter what was up against her, she continued to seek love and to be loving and be loved. And that's just so inspiring.
Yeah. The analogy that you mentioned on the episode about being in a garden and then having a trap door open underneath you. Unless you have lost a child, you can't imagine. And so neither of us can imagine what that must have been like. But it says so much to her character and so much to her spirit that she was able to go through that and still have the life that she lived and not fall apart or give up or turn to, substance abuse, which I've read some people that happens when a child is lost. It's amazing that she went through what she did, losing the child, losing a husband, and losing our paternal grandfather, and yet still brought so much of that infectious joy and that happiness and that legacy to people's lives. We heard a lot from Steve, and we heard some stories from him about Betty kind of talking him back into staying in ministry, and how that was a real crossroads for him. And Betty, thankfully, was at that crossroads when he needed her to be. And then that he continues in his ministry today is such a testament to her character and to her just orbit that people would get sucked into, and how much it meant to them. So, Andrew, we really appreciate your voicemail. We really appreciate the things you said. It's hard to wrap our minds around that kind of loss and that kind of pain in a lifetime, but, she did it. And that's part of why she is who she is.
And that's the reason we're still talking about her today.
I agree.
She made choices. She chose to be our grandmother. She chose to love us. She chose to care about us. And I don't think that we were unique. I think that she just loved, and we happen to be the grandchildren of a man who she loved. That's how random and chance it was, and we're still talking about her today because she meant that much to us.
Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to address, Andrew. You mentioned how someone could hold tight to their faith. I think she did up until her last moments. And, there's no greater love than to lay down your life for another. I think that's what she did, And it's sad to us now, looking back, considering the loss, considering growing up without her, but if you really think about the last thing that she did, it lined up so perfectly with her life. Her last action, was caring for a friend and giving her life, in the hopes of, I like to think, stopping this person from getting to Catherine. That's just kind of how. That's my opinion. That's how I think of it. That's how I look at it. And we'll hear more about Catherine in the next episode.
Yeah, Catherine was an amazing lady as well, and we look forward to sharing her story too. So thanks, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Amy writes, "Y'all are doing a great job. I anxiously await new episodes, and when the last one came out and it was 2 days later before I could listen to it, I was super anxious and annoyed by my busyness. I couldn't wait to hear more. This is my first podcast, but I love the way you tell stories, the emotion you have behind it, the sincerity, your voice, the news segments. It all floods me with memories of when this happened in real life. It feels weird to say, but this takes me back to my childhood. I remember the grief in my mother's face when she talked about this crime and about those sweet ladies and the frightening injustice against two of our own. It could have been my grandmother, who lived alone just a few miles from the house on 82 where the ladies were murdered. Such a scary time for our little tight-knit community. We all knew what happened in that house, but nobody knew who. We have been waiting for answers, for justice, for peace. I'm so glad you have brought this event back to life. People are talking. I am talking. I've been keeping notes from the podcast and thinking about who, what, when, and where. I feel connected, and I wish I knew how to help. I think I missed my calling for detective/investigative work. Bottom line, keep up the good work. Y'all are doing such a great thing here. It's amazing, and I have so much hope for finding answers and finding justice for Catherine and Betty. They must be proud of this.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much. Man, that means so much to us. And, you know, we are, I've tried to be really transparent about that we're stumbling along. We are trying to shepherd this story in the best way we can. And the only thing we want to do is we want people to talk about it again. I feel like we went so long in our lives, Simon, you and I, not really talking about this. And whether this is just cathartic for us to put something out there, to be able to have a discussion about something that was so traumatic in our lives, but it's your message that really solidifies that it wasn't just traumatic to us, that it was traumatic to a whole community. And I believe that there are other people in that community that also need to talk about it. And I know that what we bring up it's painful. And I think it's painful because it lacks resolution. But I want there to be freedom in discussing this. And here's what I believe, and I think I've mentioned this before. I believe that if this person did this to Betty and Catherine, then it is quite possible that they did it to someone else. And if they did that to someone else, that means that there is someone else talking in a living room, maybe talking across from their brother, and saying, man, what do you think ever happened to our loved one? And if what we're doing now and what we're going to do going forward, if that can bring some of that to light, then I think that only good can come from that. What we're not interested in doing is I'm not interested in pointing fingers. I'm not interested in being sensational and just trying to bring up the blood and gore to try to get downloads. I honestly, I told someone the other day, Simon, said, I don't really care if anyone is listening to this podcast, if I would be happy if the entire city of Starkville was listening to it and no one else. Like if that was it. Because I feel like that's where we're going to start to get answers, is the people that have been there and lived there and maybe know something. That's all I really care about, is getting the word out in that community so that we can take steps towards finding justice. That's it. So this message means so much to me because you were there and you remember this. And the fact that you're remembering it again and feel like you can talk about it, that's all I wanted to do. And gosh, Amy, I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for your support and thankfully for listening. And please, which I know you're probably doing already, share it with your friends. Let's get as many people to listen to this story as possible.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you for talking. Thank you for, I think you're the first person that said you're keeping notes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's very flattering. We appreciate you coming along and being with us and listening carefully enough that you're taking notes. That was very nice to read. So thank you. You mentioned such a scary time for a little tight-knit community. Can't imagine what it was like. I understand Starkville at the time was about 20,000 population. Though Jason and I went back to our hometown of Houston with a population of millions, it was a scary time for us as well. Even if it was just in our house, if it wasn't necessarily our community. So I can certainly relate to that. There really was some fear of the unknown, and I think that may have faded over decades, but it was very visceral and it was very real for a time. So certainly relate to you there and understand where you're coming from. So thank you again, Amy, so much for your support.
Let's take another quick break. If there's one thing I've learned about Betty through this process, it's that her life was dedicated to giving back. I know she would have loved organizations like Thistle Farms. At first glance, Thistle Farms is a world-class provider of natural home and body products. In the summer, their bug spray is a must. But what is truly amazing about these items are the people who make them. All of Thistle Farms products are lovingly crafted by women, survivors of trafficking, prostitution, and addiction. You see, beneath the surface, what Thistle Farms really is a place that provides safe housing, economic independence, and a strong community of advocates for these women. Take a minute to visit thistlefarms.org and learn more about this amazing organization. And while you're there, use the discount code KNOCK15 for 15% off your first order. That's thistlefarms.org, where love is the most powerful force for change in the world. Simon, can you remind our listeners, how they can connect with what we're doing and start to contribute?
Yes. Well, of course, we have, as always, our Knock Knock Facebook group. If you look us up on Facebook, we do have a group for the podcast. You can ask to join our group. Admission is free, and we'd love to have you. We'll certainly let you in. And in this group, you'll find like-minded listeners who are as interested in the podcast as you are and who discuss different bits and pieces about the case or things they like or possibly don't like about the podcast and how we're doing it. So please, if you are on Facebook, we hope you'll join us in our group. Next, you can also go to our website to post on our discussion board. Our website is knockknockpodcast.com/discussion. There you'll find different threads that you can post on or start a new one if you want. Love to hear from you, and again, you can interact with other listeners there. We also have a voicemail number. You've heard a number of voicemails on our Q&A episodes. You too can be featured, but we can't feature you if you don't call in and leave a message. So please, if you can build up the courage, work on your radio voice, you can leave us a voicemail number at 1-888-57-BETTY. That's 1-888-57-BETTY. Leave us a voicemail, and if we can, we will feature it on our next Q&A episode. Lastly, we do have a contact form. If you'd rather your comment be a little more private, we completely understand. If you want to speak to us directly, we have a contact form on our website where you can essentially send us an email, send us a message, and we'll respond to that as we're able to.
As always, thanks, Simon, for joining us for our Q&A episode. Thank you guys for listening. And to join the Knock Knock community, be sure and connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Knock Knock Pod. There you can ask questions, leave comments, or just say hi. We've also set up a voicemail at 1-888-57-BETTY. If you have comments or questions, or you'd like to be a part of the show, please call and leave a message. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or wherever you download podcasts. Reviews are key to keeping Knock Knock on the charts, where people can find our show. Knock Knock is produced by Chris Cerrone and me. Special thanks to the Knock Knock team: Lacey Arcioli, Rebecca Jones, Jason Adams, Simon Jones, Cole Flynn, Colleen Jones, and Maggie Thomas. We'll be back soon with our next full episode, so please share the podcast with your friends and family. Thanks again for subscribing to the Knock Knock Podcast.